Hello everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we're doing a box office preview for this upcoming weekend, which sees the brand new film from Warner Brothers, Wonka, as Deadline's headline points out, is going to expect to have a sweet Christmas-esque weekend, right? Getting close to the Christmas season, even though we are still very firmly and officially in the season of Advent. Don't believe whatever the mainstream media is telling you these days, or the 12 days of Christmas countdown. No, the 12 days of Christmas are the days between Christmas Day and the Feast of the Epiphany on January 6th. But we, of course, do have some box office numbers to talk about, with Wonka expected to get a $75 million worldwide start, which might sound good on paper, but when you remember the projections right now for this film's domestic run, definitely not going to be one of the biggest overall as far as this movie compared to others, looking kind of to be, honestly, in the Marvel's territory of opening weekend. Between $30 and $40 million, I believe, is the last projections I saw for the domestic. But the big thing with this one to remember is that this is obviously going to be trying to cater towards a younger audience, going to be trying to cater towards the family audience and the family demographic, and it obviously coming out at this specific time of the year is going to be why I think this film will probably end up seeing, if it is good, that is usually a pretty big caveat, if it is good, I think that it has the chance to have some strong legs down the stretch. So will this film actually make some profit? We'll have to wait and see. The numbers right now, again, don't seem to be fantastic for it, but overall, definitely not as bad as they could be, and with a film that costs a lot less than other films more recently, like the Marvels and like Disney's Wish, I think it is in a much better position going into a holiday frame. Before going any further, though, please make sure you smash that like button. Smash the rumble button as well. And also make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with that bell notification on. That way you know every time a video live stream goes live on the channel. So Tony and Nance over at Deadline, they have some things to tell us here. It says, when was the last time that Warner Brothers had a hefty trifecta at the Christmas box office? Probably been quite a while. No Oompa Loompa is set to jinx the David Zaslav-run Warner Brothers discovery over the holidays, for by Christmas week, it's conceivable that the studio will own the top 3 movies in the box office between DC's Aquaman and Lost Kingdom, which looks awful, the Oprah Winfrey Steven Spielberg produced feature musical The Color Purple, why are they remaking that movie, and Wonka, a prequel that no one was really asking for, the latter which fires up this weekend in the United States and Canada. It goes on to say that the outlook for the Timothée Chalamet starring musical is over under $40 million stateside at over 4,000 screens, with an additional $35 million abroad, inclusive of a new market, which includes France, Belgium, Holland, Australia, New Zealand, Italy, Denmark, etc. This film also had an earlier release in the international markets. That's why it's saying in addition to. But still, that $40 million domestic total as a starting point, as I mentioned, really doesn't seem all that strong. Now, I think that ultimately the strength of this movie, if it is as good as it has the potential to be, meaning not necessarily that it would be objectively good, but rather whether its performance is as good as I project it to potentially be, I think that in the long run, its opening weekend box office will not be as much of a factor. Essentially, I could see this movie having a very similar run to a lot of other smaller budgeted, and I say smaller budgeted just in the grand scheme of things, if smaller budgeted films are going to be things like in the $100 million range, compared to the $200+ million behemoths of some other Warner Brothers movies, and of course of the vast majority, if not all, of the Disney major releases, especially for this past year. I think that because of that, it will have strong legs, strong holds domestically, internationally, and be able to potentially make quite a bit of money. But again, that still all remains to be seen. We actually have to see the numbers as they come in, and we actually have to see whether or not it's able to hold, especially in the midst of a holiday frame. Going over to Box Office Pro, they have a very similar outlook for this movie. Right now, they're projecting Wonka to get somewhere around $37.5 million, and I believe that their overall range was within the same territory, right? $35 to $45 million. Is overall what they are projecting. It goes on to say that the pros are that with minimal competition ahead, familiarity across multiple generations gives this family-friendly franchise reimagining plenty of built-in awareness and potential appeal over the holiday corridor. And though that might be true, I also think that we have to remind ourselves that most people, when we think of Willy Wonka, we think of the Gene Wilder version. Right? We go back in time and we think Gene Wilder, he was Willy Wonka. You then go to the Johnny Depp atrocity that was, and even though I think that that film has a lot of hilarious moments in it, almost unintentional, and it's almost fun to laugh at in a certain respect, I do think that we look at that thing, and we look at that, I say thing because it's really in many ways an abomination of movies, but I think that a lot of us are probably a bit more wary, saying, yeah, you know what? I don't think you should try to go away from the formula. I think that I would much rather go to see the Gene Wilder version in a reimagined 4K edition of the movie versus seeing a brand new edition of the character. And everyone is just going crazy in the comments saying like, well, it's a prequel, right? It's a prequel, right? They did this in the last video too. It doesn't matter. It's still a reimagining. It doesn't matter at what point in the character's life it's going from. It's still a reimagining of that character with a brand new actor portraying that same character. And so it's going to therefore have a lot of differences, and it's going to be dealing with a part of the life that has not yet been delved into. But either way, still a reimagining nonetheless. So Wonka right now projected to go $37.5 million. And I think that if you go back in time, in fact, we love to do things live here over at OMB Reviews. We'll go ahead and pull up Box Office Pros and see what their forecasting was because, as we all know, this usually can tell us quite a bit about whether or not a film will do well or not. So they had actually been going down in their projections. So the last major update they did, as far as looking forward and looking ahead, was they thought Wonka was going to get somewhere between 26 and 36. So this is definitely a positive trend for them, right? They thought 26 to 36. Right now they're projecting 37, with the range being right in that 35 plus range. So it's already a lot better. It's like 10 million better than what their minimum was previously, even though it was trending downward beforehand. Even with that lower number though, initially, they still had the film banking somewhere between 142 and 252 domestically. So even they still saw, hey, this holiday frame is definitely going to play a lot better for a movie like Wonka, being a brand new release, right? This reimagining, having a star. I know that not everyone's going to view him this way, but he is going to be recognizable by a lot of people, right? And Timothée Chalamet playing the titular character of Wonka in this reimagining. I think that ultimately, when you look at that, you have to, of course, admit, yeah, there's the potential there for it to bring in some money. So even Box Office Pro was looking at this, and I think that I would agree that I think in the long run, the film will make a lot more. But we still have to wait and, of course, see, because this is the year of box office flops. Almost every single film that cost X amount of money this year essentially lost money and lost quite a bit of money. In fact, I just broke this down on my last live stream this past Tuesday that Disney right now, if you look at the numbers as has been reported, is looking around $1 billion in losses just from their theatrical releases alone. Not even going into Disney Plus, not even going into their TV fare, right? We're just talking about theatrical, and they only had on paper one film that you could even argue made money. Only one film, and this is actually when you look at all of their sub-brands. You look at the 20th Century Studios sub-brands, all of it, it was the only movie, and that was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. That was the only film that on paper you could ever conceivably argue it actually made money. And so that's where Disney is right now, and that's where the state of most modern major budgeted films are. And so that's why, is there absolutely a scenario where Wonka can lose money? Sure. Do I think it's going to get to that scenario? Based off of what we're seeing right now, I doubt it. I have a ticket to go see this film tonight, so that way I can give my own feedback on the movie. I'm much more excited, though, because Godzilla Minus One is set to take the number 2 spot. It would have been awesome if the film was able to somehow take the number 1 spot this weekend up against a film like Wonka. Because as you all know, I am very much a fan of the film, and I think that everyone should go and see it. It's really awesome to see also that because the film is doing so well in its day-to-day performances, Toho has actually increased the amount of theaters. So just like last weekend, we saw it go to a couple hundred more screens. It's now being increased once again to be around 2,600 screens. And even though they're adding more theaters, it's still only projected to have a 23% drop. So that is very, very good. And again, when you're adding theaters, especially for a smaller movie like this, and your overall drop is not bad, your overall drop actually ends up being pretty strong, that's a very good sign. 6.6 million there, pushing its total domestic to 36.3. With this holiday frame coming up, I do think that there is the potential for the film to continue on through that holiday season. As long as it keeps selling tickets, they'll keep on renewing it. And I think that this film has a potential to get maybe even close to $50 million domestic. And I think that it definitely has a chance of getting to $100 million plus international. And at a $15 million budget, that is very impressive, especially with basically no real marketing campaign, right? There obviously were trailers and everything like that, but most of what this film is doing right now is based on word of mouth campaign. Hunger Games is still in the mix too, 43% drop here, $5.3 million. Again, still nothing compared to the previous Hunger Games films, but still holding nonetheless, especially for costing as little as it did in comparison to other major blockbusters from this past year. Looking pretty good there. The Boy and the Heron is expected to have a pretty steep 65% drop, but I say pretty steep in that this is an animated movie. This is a Miyazaki movie. And so, of course, the first opening weekend was going to be probably more impressive than what people had thought, because every year I feel more and more people start to be drawn more towards anime, more towards these releases coming out of Japan and other places in the East. And so I think The Boy and the Heron is one of those examples, and still a 65% drop is, again, sounds very normal to me as far as an animated movie in the domestic market acting this way. And I think the film is still doing pretty well elsewhere. Trolls Band Together is still hanging around as well. I could see this film also kind of hanging out and punching above its weight through the holiday season. Christmas with the Chosen is going to be a limited event from Fathom, 2,200 screens. So again, looking pretty okay there. Wish from Disney dropping another 40%, $3.2 million. This is a movie I don't think is going to do all that well over the course of the holiday season. Right now, they're projecting it to be still in over 3,000 screens. It would not surprise me to see them drop it for more. Now, again, this is Disney, and so they can be very stubborn with these things. But just like they gave up with the Marvels very, very quickly, I just wouldn't be surprised to see if they gave up with Wish too, because even though I think some of them in the marketing department, some of them even just in the executive department are thinking, you know what? Maybe we just hold off. Maybe we just keep this movie out just until the holiday season, just to see if we can maybe have a little bit of a splash there. At my own local Publix, they actually have these random standees in there for these competitions, all that are related to Wish. And I'm like, I've never really seen them do that with other movies or other things before. And so it seems like Disney's very desperate. If I'm starting to see those kinds of promotions in a Publix, in a grocery store, very clearly going after the family dollar, right? Of families going to buy groceries in that way. That to me screams desperation. I don't think that they're, doing all that well, and I just do not see how they possibly could have any strategy to get them out of the rut that they are currently in with that. So those are, again, pretty much all the major numbers there. Just some updates. As we talked about with Wonka, I can actually update this because that is the reported budget. $125 million budget. And the film right now then needs to make roughly $300 to probably $400 million worldwide to break even based off of the start it's projected to have. I think that's definitely a possibility, but we'll have to wait and see what the numbers actually are and how it holds in the long run. We don't have an official budget yet for The Boy and the Heron, but I think that in the long run, it probably will also be able to make some of its money back too, depending on how well it continues to hold. Godzilla Minus One continuing to already, make profits at that $15 million reported budget. Very good, $50.6 million right now. As I said, I think this film will probably do well and play well over the holiday frame, and it has a chance of getting, by the end of its total run worldwide, to maybe close to $100 million, and I do think $50 million domestic is at least within reach for that movie. Renaissance continues to be a massive flop. No one has seen it really since the first weekend, and the numbers here are pretty much showing that. The Shift is also a movie that is, again, making a little bit of money here and there. It'll be interesting to see whether or not it's able to, on paper, show itself as being profitable. But even this movie has not done a whole lot in the day-to-day performances. Definitely not performing as well as the other Angel Studios released Sound of Freedom. And then we still have massive, massive flops like Napoleon, Wish, and also, of course, The Marvels, which has essentially been abandoned, but is still in theaters, has not been able to make even 1 times its budget back, and that's just the reported budget as it stands. I mentioned this last time, Hunger Games is indeed, right, in the profitability territory, right, $19.6 million. It's still not going to be the biggest and not even close to even the lowest in the franchise up until this point. So I still hold the thoughts that I do about the movie, but hey, still got to continue to give props where props are due. Thanksgiving, the slasher film, also doing very well historically, holding pretty much where most films tend to fall. So nothing crazy as far as, doing very drastically well in the first 2 weeks compared to its total run, but definitely holding its own in that way. But those are the numbers as they stand. What are y'all's thoughts? Do you plan to see Wonka, or are you instead, like many others have told me, going to just watch the Gene Wilder version instead? Seems like it'd be a pretty good use of your time. I will say, I believe that this movie is being done by the same people that also did the Paddington movies. And if that is the case, then again, Paddington actually was a lot better than it had any right to be. But that was also a passion project that I think it was Nicole Kidman was very much focused on and pushing that story and getting that story being told. So again, the fact that that was kind of this vision project and they were able to make a successful first and second movie, even though it might be some of the same creative minds or the same people behind Wonka, that does not necessarily guarantee that it's going to have the same kind of response. So we'll have to wait and see. I think that this film does have some potential to blow up, but It's like we've seen with most movies this year, especially with $100+ million budget of just in its general vicinity. We've just not really seen them do all that well. In fact, we've seen the opposite. Instead of ballooning and doing really well, most of them have flopped. So what are y'all's thoughts about that? Have you seen Godzilla -1? Have you seen any other films we've talked about? Let me know in the comment section down below. I just actually got back from seeing Dream Scenario with Nicolas Cage. Overall, I thought the film was decent, and I don't think I'm going to do a dedicated review to it, but if you want to see just my general thoughts on it, go check out my profile over at Criticlist, where I post movie reviews whenever I possibly can. But I gave it a decent score. It's fine. Cage is great. The concept is really cool. A lot of great commentary on cancel culture, but ultimately a film I don't think is worth seeing more than once, and just the pacing and the length of it, just I don't think really were conducive to movie watching in general. That's just my own personal take. But what are y'all's thoughts? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button. A lot of the far, I say smash the rumble button as well. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you have one for the rest of your day. Continue to have a blessed Advent season. I'll see many of y'all on Friday Night Tights tomorrow. And as always, God bless. And now for a special shout out to all of my Chosen of Valhalla members for the month of November, starting off with Father Luca Illich, Rosetta Allen, check out her YouTube channel, the name Eagle Rider, Miss Martin Muses, check out her YouTube channel by the same name, Matt317, check out his Twitch channel, Laura, the Mother Major General, Story, sorry I didn't have enough spirit fingers there, Mr. Roy, and ZK-Man, who you can check out over at xtheboundaries.co. If you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, check out the top link in the video description below. You get access to things like the giveaways channel, a podcast that I try to do every single month with a bunch of other awesome YouTubers, and a plethora of other content. So go ahead and check that out if you want more. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.